other members of the panel. My name is Abatan. I'm here to present my research work titled Post-Occupancy Evaluation of Library Buildings in Tertiary Institutions in Ogun State. Now, I have my table of content, then I'll move to the background of the study immediately. Buildings are critical to the operation of tertiary educational institutions on a daily basis. And it is important that tertiary institutions provide sustainable and performance-based buildings to enable them function appropriately. Now, and one of the educational buildings that is very critical to the performance of tertiary education is the academic library building. The academic library building is a critical success factor that cannot be overlooked in the tertiary institution. And that is why the accrediting bodies, the AUC, the MBT, and so on, they ensure that they use the academic library to rate tertiary institutions. So the academic library supports teaching, learning, and research. So as such, it is important to ensure that this particular building functions appropriately, effectively. So, and that is why we have discovered that usually, because of increasing number of students and staff, the academic library building cannot function properly because of overpopulation, underfunding, and some other challenges faced by the academic library. So, as a result, the problem is that the study has found out that the academic library is like the heart of the tertiary institution, and so it is expected to occupy a central position in the master plan of the university. But we discovered that many of these academic libraries are not factored in the physical planning of those university or tertiary institutions. They are confronted with problem of poor siting and location. They are usually confronted with problems of indoor environmental quality, that are poor circulation, accessibility, noise pollution from human and vehicular intrusion, and so many other problems like that. So we now the intention is to now look at how because building performance evaluation is an important area that should have been factored into the strategic planning of the tertiary institutions. So it is important that this study is now looking at how we can use post-occupancy evaluation approaches to examine how effective is the academic library building of these institutions, tertiary institutions in Ogun State. And we discovered that the knowledge of post-occupancy evaluation is poor, and there's a little awareness on the part of most operators of tertiary institutions. And we find out that even the provision of those facilities, buildings and facilities, there's no recourse to the users by the providers. So there's a disconnection, and we discovered that even for the expenditure on most of these educational buildings, they are not justified. So that there can be an evidence-based approach to justify expenditure and therefore inform future decision in the provision of these educational buildings, particularly the academic library building. So this leads us to the research question that has emanated, and the research questions are: what are the socio-economic characteristics of academic library building users in tertiary educational institutions in the study area, that is Ogun State? How effective is the technical performance of academic library building in the study area? 3, how effective is the functional element of performance of academic library building in the study area? Then 4, how effective is the behavioral element of performance of academic library building in the study area? The 5th is, what is the relationship between the academic library building and those performance elements and user satisfaction? And that leads us to the aim of the research, that is to examine the effectiveness of academic library building in tertiary institutions in Ogun State, with a view to provide feedback for stakeholders for future improvement. The specific objectives are to examine the socio-economic characteristics of the users of academic library building in tertiary institutions in the study area, to evaluate the effectiveness of the technical element of performance of the library building. 3, to assess the effectiveness of the functional element of performance of the academic library building, the study area. Then to appraise the effectiveness of the behavioral element of performance of the academic library building, the study area. Then number 5 is to establish a POE, post-occupancy evaluation framework for relationship that exists between the academic library building and user satisfaction. And that takes us to the hypothesis. The first hypothesis is there is no significant relationship between performance element of academic library building and user satisfaction in tertiary institution in Ogun State. The alternate hypothesis, there is a significant relationship between performance element of academic library building and user satisfaction level in the study area. The justification is this. The justification for this study is to ensure, because we discovered that Ogun State has the highest number of tertiary institutions in Nigeria. Number 2, in the provision of academic library building, comfort and user satisfaction is key. These are the major considerations. But we discovered that the patronage or the effectiveness of the usage of the library is as a called to question. So the architectural element and design features that are supposed to provide the needed comfort and satisfaction, they are usually not in place. And also, in order to achieve the national goal of tertiary education, that is development of high-level manpower that is necessary for national development. That's the justification for the research. And the scope of the study is, my scope is limited, of the POE study is limited to approved public and private tertiary institutions in Ogun State, and we're looking at the architectural elements and design features of academic library building in Ogun State. And the focus of the study, the scope of the study is on the technical function and behavioral elements of performance of the academic library building. And the study area, we see Ogun State, located in the southwest Nigeria. That is my study area. Then you look at the literature review, the tertiary education in Nigeria, the essence of tertiary education in Nigeria to develop high-level manpower. Then we look at the challenges facing tertiary education in Nigeria, problem of underfunding, overcrowding, inadequate infrastructure, some of these schools, those who are not even accredited, so proliferation of these schools. Those are some of the problems. So tertiary education in Ogun State was early influenced by the missionary activities, and like I said, it has the highest number of tertiary institutions in Ogun State. I have the list of universities in Ogun State, list of the polytechnics in Ogun State, and I have the list of the colleges of education in Ogun State. So historical development of libraries. We know that the library appeared in ancient times as a way to preserve recorded knowledge. You see, knowledge in those days, knowledge were recorded in clay tablets and known as cruciform, and they were kept for generation to come to be able to have to have access to them. Academic libraries. The first academic library was established in the University of Abatan in 1948. So and apart from this, there are several other libraries, and that was the beginning of the establishment of academic library. So then now let's move to architectural evaluation of buildings. From time immemorial, buildings have been evaluated, but in the olden days, buildings were evaluated informally and non-systematically. That is, craftsmen in those days were in charge of buildings. They passed knowledge from one generation to the other, and but because of technology and because of the need to provide better buildings, and because of the level of services that in buildings now, there's need for us to have a formal and systematic evaluation of buildings that are documented to inform future decisions on buildings. So a building performance evaluation is the process of systematically comparing the actual performance of building to explicitly documented performance. What we are saying here is that because of the recent time, there are explicitly stated performance parameters that we expect our buildings to perform. Now, that is the design performance. We now discover that design performance is different from the actual performance that we observe in buildings. At the point of design, it's expected that we expect them to perform in the way, but in the actual after occupation, we discover that those buildings are performing in a different way. So there are three levels. Observed performance, we have the perceived performance, and the measured performance. That's physical monitoring. But what we are doing here is perceived performance, whereby we base our performance evaluation on the users of the building. That's a user evaluation, and that is also as aspect of building use. We can see the building life cycle from the planning, design, construction operation and maintenance to occupancy, even up to the point of recycling. So now let me quickly go to, there's a relationship between building performance and user satisfaction. We studies, when the research community have decided, they have established that the users of the building are the people that are in the best position to actually measure or say particularly about the effectiveness of buildings that they use. It is the buildings has a profound impact on users. So the users are actually in a place to actually say so much about the building. And when we talk of performance evaluation, we are talking in terms of short-term, medium-term, and the long-term performances. Here we have the building performance concept, which I've earlier talked about. Then I talk about post-occupancy evaluation. Why do we do post-occupancy evaluation? To measure the functionality and appropriateness of a design, to adjust program for repetitive facilities, to make a facility adaptable, to test the application of new concepts, and to research the effect of buildings on their occupants. Now we have phases in post-occupancy evaluation. We have the indicative, we have the investigative, and we have the diagnostic. This study is actually investigative. So now let me quickly move to the performance element that we are talking about. We have the technical, we have the functional, we have the behavioral performance elements. Now maybe let me quickly move to the conceptual framework that this study, that are relevant to this study. Issue of sustainability, we are talking about social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Then the research gap in this study that you have identified. Number one, the research gap we discovered that many of us are focused on educational buildings such as student hostel, food cafeteria, lecture theatre, workshop, laboratory, classroom, faculty buildings, but very few studies have evaluated academic library buildings. Secondly, most studies are focused on the technical and the functional aspects of performance. But my own study has actually gone further to look at the behavioral aspect of building performance. So that leads me to the conceptual framework for the POE of academic library buildings. The conceptual framework, you can see the framework, we have the building performance, those are functional elements, technical elements, and behavioral elements, and these are my independent variables that leads into the user satisfaction, which is the dependent variable in this study. Now, methodology. This methodology has adopted the descriptive survey research that focus on target population. I've used the mixed method approach, whereby my primary data were obtained from survey, from using questionnaire survey and non-participant observation schedule of those elements in those sampled academic library buildings. Now, the universities, you can see the target population. My target population is those accredited schools, and that are accredited by the NUC and the MBT and the College of Education accrediting body. We have 14 accredited universities, 10 accredited polytechnics, and 5 accredited colleges of education. Now, the study population, like I've mentioned, they are there. Now, how was I able to select my libraries? Like I said, purposive sampling I've used. Deliberately, those schools that are accredited and they have a purpose-built library facility. I will have the universities that have purpose-built library, the polytechnic and the College of Education. Then how was I able to, out of the study population, how was I able to choose my sample? I did a pilot survey visiting the university, those tertiary institutions. I counted the number of effective sitting in the library, in the reading rooms. Those are the reading rooms that students have unrestricted access to. Apart from all those other areas that students don't have access to, those effective reading rooms, I looked at them and I applied the Slovene formula to come up with my sample, to come up with my the sample size. The Slovene formula, where I used the small letter n, that's the desired sample, is equal to the capital N, that's the effective system capacity all over 1, plus the n system capacity plus the 90% allowance of the sample, 0.1 sample error multiplied by raised to power 2. That was Slovene formula as used by Mustafa in his own study in Iran or Iraq. So that was how I was able to come up with my sample size. Now let me go to my summary of my data. Okay, this my objectives, the data requirements, the data type collection instrument, and the data analysis. This is the table of the summary of those analysis. Now, let me quickly go to my the sampled libraries. These are the libraries that I sampled in Ogun State. The list of those libraries. Then the response rate in my analysis. A total of 553 questionnaires were administered to respondents in Ogun State. Out of these, 515 were retrieved. Out of 515, 494 questionnaires were properly filled and analyzed, which is the result analysis of administered questionnaires. Questionnaire, this is the response rate. I have a response rate of 89.98%. The first objective, socioeconomic characteristics of academic library users. The first objective, that's this. I have the list of, I have the socioeconomic characteristics of the academic library users. But summarily, I can say that in this, the socioeconomic characteristics, found out that finding on the socioeconomic characteristics of users revealed that there are more female patrons than male patrons in the library. Most of them are below the age of 30 years. Most of them are undergraduates, with very few of them having physical challenges. Findings on the pattern of academic library usage. We have I have the pattern of the academic library usage, the age range, and how often they visit the library. Like that. That is the pattern of academic library usage in the library. Then the check-up, look at the performance element. The first one is technical performance element, and in that one, the technical performance, my findings showed that for technical performance, on the effectiveness of technical performance element, it showed that the privately owned tertiary institutions, the state-owned tertiary institutions, and the federal tertiary institutions scored the average relative effective index of 84.32%, 77.36%, and 76.68% respectively, indicating that the library buildings in privately owned tertiary institutions have the highest perceived performance of technical elements such as sanitation, acoustics, and maintenance. That's the summary on the technical. Summary of findings on the technical performance. Then on the functional performance, in terms of functional performance, I did the analysis for the federal tertiary institution. I did for the for the federal tertiary institution. I did for the state tertiary institution, and I did for the private tertiary institution. You discover that for the functional performance, the findings on the functional performance showed that the federal tertiary institution scored a relative effectiveness index of 78.39, while the state scored 73.95, and the private university scored 71.45% respectively, indicating that the library building privately owned tertiary institutions have the highest perceived performance of functional elements such as landscaping, furniture, and accessibility. Now, with regards to the behavioral performance, I obtained findings from the federal, the state, and the privately owned universities. The results show that the findings on the effectiveness of behavioral performance elements show that the federal tertiary institution obtained a relative effectiveness index of 82.98%, followed by the state-owned, which scored 80.56% and 78.81% for the private tertiary institution. This means that the library building in the federal institution has the highest perceived performance of behavioral elements such as large functional spaces, circulation routes, and that encourage social interaction. And the results showed, if you look at my framework, the results show that through this research, the results show that there is a relationship between the variables and the user satisfaction, and also it is indicative that the most important moderating factor in this relationship is the socio-economic characteristics of the users of the academic library building. So the study concluded by providing useful insight into the performance of academic library building in Ogun State and the views of stakeholders on the design and performance of this library building. The recommendations: the study recommended that there should be a significant improvement in the planning, designing, and management of academic library building at the federal, state, and privately owned tertiary institutions in Nigeria. This is achievable by considering the variables, attributes, and parameters that are capable to ensure effective performance consistent with satisfaction and comfort of users and organizational goals and objectives. Adequate consideration is expected to be given and priority to accommodating the physically challenged, the disabled, through universal design and inclusiveness in the design, planning, and construction and management of the academic library building. Number 3, all regulatory agencies of tertiary education under the Federal Ministry of Education in Nigeria and the private physical planning department of respective tertiary education institutions should ensure conformance to planning and design standard and requirement of their buildings and facilities for the achievement of sustainable learning environment. Tertiary education should commence regular performance evaluation of their buildings and facilities by integrating users' perspectives, insight, and opinion in order to achieve best quality building performance management. It is recommended that managers of tertiary education institutions in Nigeria should appreciate the important role of post-occupancy evaluation in the tertiary education sector. This is because by evaluating the feedback from users, it will ensure that resources in terms of time and money spent in the management will not be waste, and planning departments are able to make input for programming for future implementation. So, contribution to knowledge. The study has brought about a better understanding of how improvement in the effective performance of academic library building tertiary institutions can impact on individuals and organizations. The study has also provided an exemplary approach for documentation of performance evaluation of academic library buildings and the facilities using post-occupancy evaluation approach. The study has provided an understanding of the influence of each of the 3 categories of performance elements: technical, functional, and behavioral, and the socio-economic characteristics of the users on the effectiveness of performance of academic library building. And the study has further fulfilled the knowledge gap by providing an empirical platform on how architectural evaluation of academic library building can contribute to the achievement of sustainable learning environment. Thank you, sir.